to surprise me, Tajari, but the hour grows late. Who are you to overthrow your fate?
And I have unmade you.
Hey guys, in this video we're going to go over my Spark Lightning Conduit Archmage build I've been playing recently. So, been taking a little bit of a break from the crossbow build, mainly because I do kind of want to wait for GGG to sort of patch the game, probably sometime next week or whenever that happens, to sort of continue the build any further. And in the meantime decided I want to try out Spark, because Spark, you know, everyone knows it is the best skill in the game, pretty much, like mechanically the way it works. Right now you can see that we are actually playing with Energy Shield. I think a lot of the Lightning Conduit builds right now are just not even playing with Energy Shield and going for a pure sort of damage setup where you're just playing mind over matter pretty much. I don't know, it felt weird playing without Energy Shield, so I decided we're going to go for the Energy Shield setup, and overall feels a lot better in maps and this kind of stuff, not having to constantly worry that you're slowly killing yourself every time you're casting. Alright, so we have a Citadel over here. It's on a T15 map, and then we do have 114% more monster life, so hopefully that doesn't give us too many problems, but let's just kind of see what it's like. So I'll start off with the Sigil of Power, and I like to put out my two little orbs. And as soon as he spawns in, we're going to curse him, and then hopefully kill him off with the lightning conduits. There we go. I think we got the first phase down. I think. Yeah. So first phase down, and then let's go to... Wow, the curse went all the way up to 79. That's kind of cool. I've never seen it go that high. But now second phase, hopefully this isn't giving us too many problems either. I think we just blink over here, do the Sigil of Power, do the curse, and go ham. I really need to actually get better mana, or maybe I think like reduce my reduce my curse mana cost, because right now the curse mana, you see, is pretty insane. It's like what, 1,200 mana to cast this thing. What? Yo, that does not even match the tooltip. The tooltip said 400. Oh, but maybe it's these multipliers, right? You know, I should probably get rid of this Impending Doom, guys, because now without Impending, oh, it's 1,000. Okay, well, anyways, do definitely need to sort of fix the curse mana situation, because that's kind of crazy. Alright, so that is sort of what it looks like when you're fighting a boss, and right now we are still not using the mana flask, the unique flask, so mana can sort of be an issue on bosses and that kind of stuff, because you're just constantly draining it so fast with the cast on shock setup. But overall, I think, you know, it's okay, because they're pretty much dying, as you can see, pretty quickly, and in maps, the cast on shock doesn't proc enough to cause any mana problems. So in mapping, it feels really good. When you go kill a boss, a little bit awkward sometimes, but most of the time, for map bosses, they're just kind of dead before you run out of mana, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's talk about the build cost. Now, I think this character is actually pretty cheap in terms of what most of these Spark Lightning Conduit builds are playing. I also do have rarity on pretty much all of my items where I can, so that is actually driving up the cost of the build quite a bit. I'd say about maybe 20 div or so for all the gear, and then the belt was another 24-ish divines, or 23. I mean, I bought this belt for about 16 divines really early on, so wasn't as expensive as it is now, but still, so maybe about 40-ish divines for my current setup. And the thing is, I was playing this build from level 1 pretty much, right? And then when I just hit maps, my gear was like really bad. I didn't have all of these rarity gear, you know, I didn't have a lot of mana or energy shield on them, but the build was still working out pretty well, even in that lower tier content, and slowly upgrading my gear to what it is right now. Okay, so let's take a look at the skill tree, what we're doing. So pretty sort of standard setup. I have opted in to go into get a little bit more energy shield instead of recharge rate. And the main thing is because on my Spark setup, I'm using the energy barrier skill, and I guess you could use the other one where it's like recover 4% of ES when you kill a shocked enemy, but in bosses and that kind of stuff, that doesn't really do anything. And I did kind of like this energy barrier setup. It does take a little bit of getting used to knowing what skills are going to stun you, kind of that kind of thing, and then kind of casting when that happens to kind of proc the energy recharge. But overall, once I got used to it, I did really like this, so I decided to keep this. So now I really don't really care that much about recharge speed, and mostly just want to get recharge rate, because this has saved my life like quite a few times. All right, so for the skill tree, as you can see, we're just taking all the usual energy shield and mana kind of stuff over here. And then up here, I've actually unspec'd a lot of this cast speed stuff, because I actually have way too much cast speed. I think already at like 6 casts per second, and I think that's more than enough. So I've taken out some cast speed and went down. Instead of here, I had all these points here, and I think I had some more exposure effect and that kind of stuff, but opted in to get a little bit more shock magnitude and some mana regen. Okay, so that's pretty much the tree, guys. There'll be a link on Mobalytics for the tree that I was running, and let's go over some of the weapon swaps. Alright, so my main weapon swap is pretty much the red one. It's going to be for the spark or the wand setup, where we have a lot of the damage notes over here, and then the projectile speed over here, and then the chain over here as well, and then down here for the shock magnitude. So that's pretty much weapon set 1. I'm using pretty much all of my points, 23 points. And then my second weapon set, maybe this could be optimized a little bit better, mainly because over here there is another really nice area of effect node. But anyways, so we're just getting the curse stuff over here, some more curse stuff over here, and then the last points I just put into area. So we get a little bit more area of effect on our Sigil of Power, and then also on the curses. You can't really see them because my curse activation speed is so fast, it's pretty much instant, so you don't really even see it, and it is actually costing quite a bit of mana. But anyways, so that is the 2 weapon sets that I'm running right now. And like one funny thing that I was doing at one point is, because I was actually having a lot of mana problems, right? So I actually just wasn't using Mind Over Matter, and I also wasn't running the Eldritch Battery. So if we take a look here, we have 6k ES right now, and if we get rid of these 2, well, let's check out the mana regen. Our mana regen is 723, and if we get rid of these 2, you can see also we have quite a bit more mana regen, but more importantly, our energy shield is like at 11k, right? So we pretty much double our energy shield. Our DPS did drop. See, we're at 30,000 DPS compared to 45. So we did lose quite a bit of damage, but just having this much more energy shield and not having the penalty of Mind Over Matter made gameplay earlier on feel a lot better, I'd say. I even did manage to kill a Zesh T4 in this setup. You can see here, my energy shield was a little bit lower at the time, but we have 9k ES, and you can see the damage, well, it's not like super, you know, crazy. We're still chunking him down pretty good, and survivability pretty high on this setup because of the amount of energy shield you have, right? So the boss fight was pretty comfortable, and I think until you actually get tons of damage to actually just one-shot these guys, then this setup did definitely feel like way more comfortable to play. Alright, so let's go over some of the gear that we're using. This is my wand. Not really anything too special, just wanted to get the mana, the level of lightning or all spell skill gems, and the cast speed. Mana regen is nice, spell damage, lightning damage also is pretty nice. For the helmet, so the way I'm actually running all my auras right now is I have the Cast on Shock and Arcane Surge, and sometimes I can actually just swap these around if I want to run Grim Feast in a map, so it's kind of nice. And only really need to have 60 extra spirit to run this setup, right? Because we need 100 for Archmage. Archmage is 100, and then we need another 60 to run the Cast on Shock. So what you could do is, if you want to run all 3 auras, which you probably could, is you need to get Spirit Corruption on the helmet, and then also Spirit on the body armor. And right now, I could actually go and buy a body armor with 60 spirit on there, and then also run Grim Feast and Cast on Shock at the same time if I wanted to, but I haven't really bought that yet. But anyways, so right now I'm just running a 30 spirit on the body armor and then 30 spirit on the helmet. And the nice thing about this setup is it's pretty cheap, right? You could even get a corruption on the helmet with like 25 spirit, and then just run a 35 spirit body armor. And the 35 spirit body armors are pretty cheap because no one really wants them. They all want the 60 spirit body armors. So this setup is actually quite cheap to get going, which is pretty nice. Alright, so these are the rings we're using. Mainly, I just want to get mana, cast speed, some resistances, and then rarity. So this one actually is pretty nice. This one over here too is, just mana, cast speed, rarity, resistances. And the body armor went over, we just need spirit and then some intelligence if you can, and then resistance. The helmet, I'm not really like too picky about the helmet because, it's a corrupted item. Unless you want to get a really expensive one, then pretty much just assume that your helmet is not going to have any stats on it. I guess except for the spirit. Okay, so for the focus, I decided to use the focus. I did try the shield setup, but I didn't like it because I was losing actually quite a lot of damage going to the shield instead of a focus, so decided to keep the focus. And this one, you just want to get mana, level of all spell skills, cast speed, and that's pretty much it. Okay, and then for the boots, now the boots, here again, same kind of thing where we want mana, energy shield, rarity. I guess if we're going for the rarity setup now, like how much rarity do you want? And I think you probably want to keep, you don't really need to go over about 120 rarity, right? So I have like 119, and like around 100% rarity is probably like totally fine. I don't really think there's much point in going over that. I don't know, maybe there is, but there's been some tests, right? About 120-ish rarity is sort of where you want to be. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And yeah, it's been working out pretty good. Notice quite a lot more currency dropping with this rarity setup. All right, yeah, so gloves, same thing. So mainly the goal of the gear is just energy shield, base energy shield, because the base energy shield gets converted to mana with Eldritch Battery, so we get some more mana that way. And then we just want flat mana wherever we can. And then if you can get intelligence, and get that because that means more mana. And then after that, just resistances and rarity. Okay, so this is the gear we're using. Let's take a look at our weapon swap. So now I just actually bought this weapon, but now I'm kind of thinking it was a bad idea. So I bought a Sigil of Power staff with the +7 to all lightning skills. And this is actually leveling up my curse by quite a bit. So my curse is level 26, but you can see the mana cost is pretty insane, 440 mana to cast this thing. Compared to when I swap over to my wand, you see it's level 23 and only costs 330 mana. And you only get another -1 to lightning res, which isn't really that big, but then that's all scaled by the curse effect. So not super important, and maybe it's probably even better just to run a lower level conductivity until if you do have mana problems, because this is like we can get run out of mana pretty quickly by doing this. All right, so that's the weapon that we're using. And let's go over some of these skills. So for Sigil of Power, I did socket in the magnified effect, so it does have a pretty big area effect, so I can sort of stay in it a lot longer and dodge things without having to run out of the circle. It's another reason why I'm actually pathing into a lot of these area nodes on the second weapon set, so that the Sigil of Power is quite a bit longer. Okay, so that's the Sigil of Power. And then for Spark, so for my setup right now, since I'm focusing a lot on shock, the actual tooltip of the Spark isn't really as high as it could be. Also, you could be running some damage supports in there and that kind of stuff. And once you are sort of like buffed up and you're attacking and that kind of stuff, the tooltip number can go up quite a bit. Like, right, you can go up to maybe 100k ish full DPS on Spark, but Spark isn't really needed to do very high single target, right? We just need to clear the map and kill rare monsters. That's pretty much it. And we do have a decent amount of proj speed, 110%. I mean, would like to get a little bit higher, but the main thing is we have pretty high cast speed, and the very high cast speed means we can shoot out quite a lot of the sparks, right? So that's pretty nice. And yeah, so since we are building into a lot of shock, this number is probably like, right now my shocks without any kind of extra shock effect from the 2 Orbis Storms is about 55%. So that is 110% more damage pretty much. So it's probably doing about around 100,000 plus, right, DPS if you factor in the shock. So this is like more than enough for doing maps and breaches and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so the links we're doing is we have Inspiration, and then we have Arcane Tempo Acceleration, persistence. Right now the sparks are at a 4.5 second duration, which is like more than enough, I think. Well, I'm not even pathing down to the more duration on spark over here because I didn't really feel like I needed it because, well, first of all, I don't have any pierce, right? I'm only getting a chain. So the actual sparks, once, you know, they're not going to be alive for that long anyways, so I don't really think you don't really need that much duration on them with this current setup. Okay, and lastly, energy barrier. Like I said, you could swap this around. You can put in another damage support here if you want, or you can do the shock siphon support like this one here. If this one feels better to play with, you can swap that around for this if you want. Okay, so that is the spark. Now for Grim Feast, I just have it linked to clarity because I used to use this, but then now I'm actually not even using it that much. Now that I actually do have a lot more energy shield, so don't really even need Grim Feast. Maybe once I get a 60 spirit body armor, then I'll turn it on and start using that. And for the cast on shock setup, now this is something I am sort of not really 100% sure on yet, but I am adding in the voltaic mark in the setup, so we're casting 2 spells. Mainly just because we get the 50% more chance to shock, and then the increased shock effect. Right, because increased shock effect sort of double dips with lightning conduit, especially on the Stormweaver when we can apply 2 shocks, right? So this has been working out pretty well. I guess you could take it out for another damage support, but this is actually going to be a damage support anyways. But anyways, I'm not really 100% sure on this, but this is just what I put in, and it's been working out pretty good, so I just left it as it is. And then we have lightning conduit over here, and then impetus. We get some more energy, and then considered casting, so we get some more 40% more damage, and then another 30% more damage over here. So that is the setup here. And for my Orbistorm setup, this is pretty much just to apply exposure and a very high shock. So you can see we have the lightning exposure, we have more exposure effect, then we have the shock magnitude, and then we have the extra limit, so I can have 2 of these guys. Alright, so that is pretty much the setup that I'm running. And Mana Tempest, so now I don't really even use Mana Tempest that much. You can use it to like call a boss, kind of, right? But I mainly use this while I'm mapping for the extra chains, like especially in a breach, right? Feels really good when you use it in a breach, so that's mainly the only time that I'm actually using the Mana Tempest skill. And we do have it linked over here to Premeditation and Murderous Intent. So that is the links there. And for conductivity, I'm running the Focus Curse, then the Heightened Curse, and Impending Doom. I don't know, just had an extra link, so might as well, right? I don't really think it does that much because it's not proccing all that much, but it is kind of maybe do a little bit of extra damage every now and then. Okay, Archmage is, you know, just this one little spell over here, Lightning Mastery, that's all we're using. And for Blink, now I have added a Blink weapon swap. So the way you set this up is you have your blink set to weapon set 2, and then you have your cast on shock only set to weapon set 1. So it means when I am in my weapon set 1, I can dodge roll, and if I swap over to weapon set 2, then I can blink, pretty much. So that's kind of how it works. You do have to sort of swap weapons and then blink, or like say cast a skill that is set to weapon set 2, so my conductivity is set to weapon set 2, as well as the Sigil of Power. So I can press either one of these skills and then cast Blink, and then, you know, it will automatically cast the Blink because we're in weapon set 2. And that is the gems where I'm just socketing it into the cooldown recovery and then the extra use, because I don't really need to use it that often, but every now and then when I do want to use it, I can use it to like blink twice in a row. Alright, so let's take a look at the jewels. There's only one jewel that you're going to really need, and that's going to be the recover 2% of mana on kill jewel. This is going to help you sustain your mana in maps and breaches and that kind of stuff. So you definitely need at least one of these. And then as for jewel priorities, I'm pretty much only prioritizing first of all energy shield, because I do want to run the energy shield version, so getting a lot of energy shield, and then either cast speed or some other kind of damage stat like elemental damage. And then lastly, I do want to get wherever I can, I want to get the increased magnitude of ailments or increased magnitude of shock. right? Because for lightning conduit, we do want to get as much shock effect as possible to increase the damage on our lightning conduit. And also, I guess shock effect is going to be a more multiplier for your spark as well. I mean, it won't show up in the tooltip, but you know, if you have 100% increased shock, that's like 100% more damage, right? So getting shock effect is also going to be quite a big damage increase for spark as well. So I think overall, probably the most valuable stat you can get on this kind of build. Right, and I think Mobilytics does have a item import. So what I'll do is I'll try to import all of my items as they are currently in the build into the Mobilytics planner, so you can go check out exactly what kind of stats that I was running. Alright, so like I mentioned before, if you are having some mana problems, then what you can do is get rid of Eldritch Battery, get rid of Mind Over Matter, and then instead put these points into whatever else. Like you can go into some more damage, because you are going to be losing some damage from getting rid of Eldritch Battery, but you're going to be doubling your energy shield, and you're not going to have to deal with the cost, like the mana cost, right? So that setup is quite nice earlier on, I'd say, when you don't have a lot of, first of all, a lot of mana, you don't have a lot of energy shield on your gear, so this Eldritch Battery isn't even doing as much, right? Because it's adding your energy shield to your mana, and then that gets scaled with the archmage. So if you don't have a lot of energy shield on your gear, then this isn't going to be adding as much value, but you're going to be gaining quite a lot more energy shield, and it's going to help you survive quite a bit more. But anyways, guys, that'll be it for this video. The full planner will be on Mobilytics, so you can go check that out if you're interested. And yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.